better than two.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sweet Home Catoosa. I'm your guest host here, Richard Tharp, and today we are lucky enough to have Chuck Harris, County Commissioner, District 2 for Catoosa County. Yes, and Denia Reese. Wow, Denia, thank you for being here. How is it being a citizen now for the last 2.5 years, not being our school superintendent and everything else? How's the retired life been?
Pretty much everything you want it to be, when you're retired, what you do with your time. But I thoroughly enjoy being retired and also doing some other things in the community, like serving on the North Georgia Electric Co-op Board of Directors and the College and Career Academy Board of Directors. So it's given me the opportunity to give back. I always said that when I retired, I wanted to give back to the community because it gave so much to me when I was a superintendent in the school system. So I've enjoyed being able to do some of those things.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for all your years of service. I know our children went through the school system. You were a school superintendent the whole time, and what a great experience we had. So thank you. So the reason you two are here today, I wanted to talk about a topic, sales tax. Let me just get it out. And for me, lately, we've got a bill on the ballot, House Bill 581. It's House Resolution 1022. And boy, we've talked about that thing until I think everybody's halfway confused, right, Chuck, on the topic. Yeah. But on that House bill, there's a potential for another penny in our sales tax. So I thought, well, before we talk about that penny, I needed to go back because as I talked to folks, a lot of folks are like, well, we've got 7 cents in our sales tax now. And I'm like, yes, do you know what that 7 cents each penny accounts for? And they're like, well, not really. And I thought, yeah, before we go talk about a new penny, we should probably talk about the existing pennies we have and why they're so important and what makes up our 7 cents right now. And so the reason I asked you two to be here today is because you two have touched, and Denia, when you were school superintendent, you touched E-SPLOST in that penny. Yeah, 3 times. And so I needed folks to really understand why these pennies are in place and what they do for the citizens in their everyday lives, to talk about those before we could ever get to the other penny that Chuck and I'll talk about. So Denia, I'm going to start with you. And so real quick, we've got 7 cents we pay every time we spend $1 in Catoosa County. 4 cents of that goes to the state. So that leaves 3 cents that stay here locally. And out of one of those pennies, we have E-SPLOST. So Denia, tell us about E-SPLOST and tell us what that does for us in Catoosa County.
I'm happy to talk about E-SPLOST. I think that E-SPLOST is one of the best things that the Georgia legislature ever enacted for the state of Georgia. And I think we can all relate to that because we're neighboring counties with Hamilton County. And we see how difficult it is for our neighbors to the north to be able to keep up with facilities in their school system. E-SPLOST stands for Education Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, and it is that 1 penny our citizens pay on consumer goods in our county. And so every dollar that you spend, 1 penny, goes to the school system to fund capital projects. And when I talk about capital projects, of course, that is building new schools, renovating existing schools. But the E-SPLOST also pays for a lot of things that you really don't think about. And if you're a homeowner, you know that there is a lot of maintenance that goes into maintaining a home. The school system has over 1 million square feet in facilities. So we have 17 schools, and that's not including our central office and our maintenance and transportation departments. And so when you have that many square feet of facility, it takes a lot of maintenance. But E-SPLOST not only pays for new schools, for growth in our existing renovations of our schools, but you can use E-SPLOST pennies to purchase buses. And I want you to think about what a transportation system the school system here at Catoosa have. But we have an up-to-date fleet in our school system, and that is because of E-SPLOST. One bus can cost over $100,000. And a handicap bus, which is our special ed buses that some of our students in wheelchairs must use, can cost well over $100,000. And so we have an up-to-date fleet, and that one of the things that's important about having an up-to-date fleet of buses is the fact that, you can get reimbursed from the state for certain. If you let your buses go out of date, then you don't get reimbursement from the state for some of the purchases of your buses. And so it's important to be able to keep an up-to-date fleet for safety purposes also. But E-SPLOST pennies also goes for things that you don't see if you're just driving down Battlefield Parkway. E-SPLOST pennies pay for roofs. And when you think about replacing a roof on a high school, we're talking millions of dollars to replace a roof on a high school. It pays for the roofs. It pays for your HVAC and heating units in every school. And you think about how many classrooms we have in 17 schools. So we're able to make sure that all of our heating and air units are up to date and working properly. And I want you to also think about every kitchen. And we have an industrial-sized kitchen in every one of our schools to feed our students. And so being able to replace freezers, coolers, all of the things that go into an industrial kitchen is very important. E-SPLOST pays for those things. And so also when you attend a football game, if you look around and you think about the facilities that our school system have as far as athletics, it's very expensive to maintain athletic facilities. And I'm very proud of the fact that you go to each one of our schools, you're going to see that our schools are in great shape. We have up-to-date facilities. You're not going to see crumbling schools. You also are not going to hear that we have to prioritize schools in order to keep them up to date and maintained. E-SPLOST allows us to be able to replace a roof when it's needed, not put each school on a list of things that would happen in a time period. You see that with our neighbors up north of us. They have to prioritize which schools are actually going to receive the maintenance.
It's bad. It is. I see it on the news, and I'm sure you two also see it. And when you watch the news, they've had schools that they've had to shift folks away from because their infrastructure of the school, the roof, the AC unit, the school itself is just so old and outdated that they can no longer they can't have schools there anymore.
Exactly. So they have to prioritize what they do. That is not the case in Catoosa County, and that is directly because of that penny that our citizens have voted and approved since 1996. And so we're very fortunate in Georgia to be able to have an E-SPLOST, and the fact that our community supports that so that we never have to be in a situation where a roof can't be fixed or heating and air can't be fixed for our children, because it's just not acceptable here in Catoosa County. And that's because we pass E-SPLOST each time. And so we're just very fortunate. And I also want to point out the fact that when I became superintendent, the board had just passed a resolution that we needed a third high school, and we were able to build Heritage High School with E-SPLOST funds. And so when other states, other school systems have to pass issue bonds to be able to build new schools. That is not the case in Catoosa. And here's what's great about E-SPLOST is if you issue bonds to build schools, then that is on the back of the taxpayer of your county. But E-SPLOST allows us to build new schools and revitalize existing schools, and we share that with people outside our county. And so to me, there is nothing better than the E-SPLOST to be able to keep your school system up to date and to be able to give students great, safe facilities, and they're clean and well maintained. And so that's the big thing that I think is special about E-SPLOST is it allows us to be able to have an outstanding first-rate school system as far as facilities, and we share that with people outside our county because they do come here to shop. And so I just think it's the best bang for your buck to be able to, share that responsibility.
It is. And I, as a parent, had kids go through the school system. That's one thing I could always say. They went to West Side Elementary. Our daughter went to Battlefield, Lakeview, Fort Oglethorpe for a minute before we moved over here. And then they both attended and finished through Ringgold High as well, and Lakeview Middle. So different parts of the county. But the thing was, the schools were always the same. They were always in such good shape. I mean, I'd walk into, our West Side when they were there as elementary kids, and it's just like, it just, when you have that environment, when you have a nice facility, it's clean, it just, I don't know. It's a great learning environment for children. And when you talk about our neighbors to the north, yes, as a kid, if you're in a school and it's too hot or it's too cold, or, you're looking around and it doesn't smell the best, or because the ceilings are a bit leaking and it's a musty smell or whatever it may be, those things do take away from the experience of the child. Child should never be thinking about any of those other things. They should be focusing on their education. And I think it's huge. And then my wife and I this year, we went down to Ringgold and went and saw Peter Pan. And when you walk into that auditorium, you feel like, wow, this is just amazing. I mean, it's just and then you see all the sets there. And then down there, LFO this year, they got their edition on, and they got theirs. And so in Boynton right now, I mean, they're getting their work done at that school because, there won't be that parking across the street waiting to pick their kids up. It'll all be fixed and everything. So I've seen those pennies work for years, and I think it's great. But I think the average citizen had no idea that when I pay that 7 cents on tax, that one of those pennies is going to do all those things that you just described. And I think it's important for folks to know that.
It is. And it's important for folks to understand, too, that, there's a plan. There's always a plan for E-SPLOST, and the board is very good about community engagement. Every E-SPLOST that we've passed, well, I can attest to the last 3, we held a community engagement meeting, a town hall meeting, to get input into what those pennies would be spent for the next 5 years. Because I think it's important for the community, you're going to invest and you're going to support the school system in that penny, that you have the ability to voice your opinion on what needs to happen for the next 5 years. And one of the great things that we were able to do is, listening to our community, they told us over and over that they want well-maintained facilities and they want up-to-date facilities. And you can't do that unless you have this penny. And here's the reason. When we look at a school, and I'm going to use Graysville as the first example, Graysville Elementary here in District 3, it was built in 1951. And so that building had become almost obsolete. Several sections of the building, we couldn't wire that building anymore for the technology that we needed for the students. It became impossible to wire an old building and put that kind of investment into it. And so when we looked at what needed to happen at Graysville, we did a revitalization of the entire campus. And now it's practically a new school that was built in 1950. And you're seeing the same thing happen. The next school on the list was Boynton Elementary because it was the next oldest in our county. We're able to go in and do the exact same thing at Boynton and revitalize that campus so that the major portion of the buildings will be new. And so that's an important piece that I think people don't see. Like I said, you don't see this driving by, but the technology inside that school is paid with E-SPLOST. That is one of the great things, besides buses, besides HVAC roofs. You can use E-SPLOST pennies for new technology. And so every one of our students has a Chromebook that they use. We have one-on-one technology for our students. And everything that you see is bought with those pennies. And so we're able to refresh that every 5 years because technology goes out of date so quickly. And so using the E-SPLOST pennies, we're able to keep up with what the students need now, not what they needed 10 years ago, because everything changes so quickly. And we're able to do those things with those E-SPLOST pennies. So a lot of the things that the money is spent for, you might not see unless you go inside the building or attend a football game, a baseball game, a soccer game. But those pennies are critical to be able to keep up-to-date facilities here in our county for our students.
Well, thank you. I think that's a phenomenal explanation of E-SPLOST. What did Chuck, didn't she hit it all?
I agree. I was just sitting here taking it in. And the one thing I wanted, you said, people don't see it. They do see it. They just don't realize what they're seeing. You watch the news, and you alluded to that. You watch the news and you see buckets in some Tennessee schools where they're catching water dripping in. You don't ever see a news crew going into a Catoosa County school showing the poor condition of the school. So people don't think about, they do see it. They just don't know they're seeing it. What they're seeing is good stewards of the taxpayers' money. It's a lot cheaper to keep something up than to bring it back from the brink. Right. If you let it go.
And that's the situation of our neighbors, because it has gone, and now you can't catch up.
Right.
And so that's why we're able to keep our buildings in such good shape, is because we have those pennies to be able to address issues when they come about. It's just like I said, and you as a homeowner, there are always going to be things that you're going to have to do for your home. And fortunately for us, we have the ability to take care of things quickly. And I think that our parents and our citizens appreciate that because they have always been so supportive of E-SPLOST.
They do. So now E-SPLOST comes back up for its renewal vote when?
It'll be March of 26.
March of 26. So.
And I can talk about this now because I will take office in January 1st on the school board. But that's one of the reasons that I wanted to be on the school board, is I wanted to help lead this endeavor to continue our E-SPLOST because it's so important. And I've seen it firsthand because I was responsible for building Heritage High School. I was responsible for rebuilding Ringo High School and Ringo Middle from the tornado. And, of course, Graceful when we started the revitalization. So, I want to be a part to continue that because I know how important it is to our county and how important it is for our students. So being on the school board, we will continue our tradition of community engagement meetings and letting our citizens have input each the next E-SPLOST and then choosing the projects that will happen for the next 5 years after 26.
Yeah, and that's what's so unique about that, too, with the school. You want that community engagement. What is it you see, community, that we need that maybe we don't see, and we can talk about that because that's such a great way. And then they see, hey, we said we needed this, and it's been put in place. So it's very unique. Listen, the voters here in District 3, and I live in District 3, and you had my vote, obviously, because I had been a part of your school system and you leading that for years, overwhelmingly said we would love to have you and your knowledge and your leadership come to the school board. So we're all looking forward to that. And congratulations. In January 1st, you'll get sworn in, and then the great folks at Catoosa County will benefit from that leadership and experience you have. So thank you for stepping back out of retirement to come and help Catoosa County in the public education system here again. So thank you for that, Denia.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to being part of what happens in the next 4 years for District 3. And one of the things I want to end with is that the great thing about our school board is that we don't just represent our district. And it's always been a commitment and something that is that we actually take very seriously. And when you take office on the school board, you represent all 10,000 students, not just the students in your district. And when I see other school systems start to fight for their district, for things that they want for their particular district, and then it becomes one of those unpleasant times because you feel like you have to fight for your district. That's not the case in Catoosa. And that E-SPLOST penny makes that go away because no matter what school it is and no matter which athletic field, those E-SPLOST pennies help to take care of everything at the same time. And it took us a while to get the 3 equitable high schools because we built Heritage High School and it was brand new. And then we had to bring the other 2 high schools back to where they had equitable facilities. It may take time, but there's no having to push an agenda for your district because those E-SPLOST fees go for all the facilities. And I think that's what makes it a beautiful thing. That, we take care of everything. No one is feeling left out when it comes to, addressing needs. So, the E-SPLOST pennies help make that happen here in Catoosa because you don't hear that here. And that's exactly why. Because those E-SPLOST pennies go for the entire district and all kids are taken.
And they are. I don't think anybody will disagree that the kids are not taken care of. Absolutely. We can get into all kind of other subjects, but the one thing everybody's going to agree on is the kids are very well taken care of in Catoosa County, and we appreciate that. So thank you for coming today and sharing your years of wisdom and telling the folks why that penny, E-SPLOST, is important. So thank you, Denia, for coming. So that takes us through penny number 1. So, we've got 4 that go to the state. Then we have the 1 penny E-SPLOST that goes to our schools, and Denia laid out a very good explanation of what that penny does and the importance of that penny. And I think folks would understand a little bit better now why that's so important and the things that it does for everybody that we may, like Chuck said, we may or may not see. So Chuck, that brings us now to, we'll call it, we have a penny that's called lost. Mm-hmm. And you were part of those negotiations. And so walk us through that, the local option sales tax and kind of what that does and then how that broke down between the 2 cities and the county.
Well, the local option sales tax is a property tax offset, unlike SPLOST. And a lot of people believe SPLOST,
we'll get into
you see a lot of people talking about that.
We do.
The LOST is applied to go directly against your property sales or your property tax. I'm sorry. So that is a negotiation between the 2 cities and the county where we work out what the split is. And it's a very complicated process and probably made more complicated because there's really no guidelines in it. It's just a free for all. And so the cities and the county work really well together to try to get a very equitable split that the bottom line, it's there to service and serve the citizens. So LOST just goes into the general funds of the counties and the cities to operate the county and the city, their services. And that goes directly against, that prevents property tax increases. Because you could have something big happen and all of a sudden you have to come in and raise property taxes. And again, I know, look, everybody out there, including me, hates property tax.
Sure.
I don't like property tax. That is what the founding fathers of Georgia created to fund everything. They saw fit to do that. Is there better ways? There could be, and that's what we're probably going to talk about a little bit at the end. But right now, the idea being that everybody pays taxes against the value of their property. And so with that coming into the county and the loss coming into the county, that's what the county uses to run general government.
Now, LOST was negotiated. It's a 10-year agreement, and it was done in 2022, correct?
Yeah.
And I saw something where it said it started out at certain percentages, and then over the 10 years, the county will get a little less and the cities get a little more as that goes on. And I think the argument for the cities was the fact that they feel like a lot of the revenue comes in through the cities, and so they wanted to see as much stay within their city governments as possible. And so, like you said, there was no playbook. I'm sure, in 10 years, that'll be a whole nother new negotiation and have to go again with that agreement. But for the next 10 years or next 8 now, that agreement's in place and that'll follow through. So that's penny number 2. So we've got 4 to the state, E-SPLOST and LOST. Last penny number 3, which is SPLOST. And this one, I think, is talked about more by the citizens than any other penny that we have in the 7 cents we pay right now. And I think there's a lot of information that goes out. And from a citizen's perspective, what we hear, and from a government perspective, what you guys are saying and the messaging, and they're different.
Right.
They're different for sure. But I'll say this. So let's just first talk about what is SPLOST and what does that do for us, and then we can kind of get into some of the other things with SPLOST.
Okay, so LOST is a local option sales tax. A SPLOST is a special purpose local option sales tax. The key word being special purpose. It cannot go into your general fund to pay salaries and to, to do anything as far as operational of the employees of the county. What it is for is special purposes. That's how we buy fire trucks and we buy sheriff's cars. What Dina was referring to, upkeep of buildings, very expensive. SPLOST allows us to put a roof on a building. It allows us to we've got a historic courthouse that SPLOST allows us to put air conditioning in it and new windows that meet the historic guidelines that's required. So SPLOST allows all those special purpose items. And a lot of people, you've heard them say, well, they said if we don't vote for SPLOST, our property tax will go up. That is not anything that is said.
No, it's never been said by government, is the government side of the story. And then what citizens say is, well, but the messaging over here is, but if we don't put that penny in, we have to get that revenue from somewhere. And that revenue would have to come from more than likely what? Increased property taxes to offset that. Yeah. So I guess the citizens, it wasn't said, but when you take the second piece, they just interpret that as the first piece.
That's right.
Going in.
And it is true. It's not, there's not a mechanism that your property tax will increase if SPLOST is not there, but it's just a fact of life. If now you've got to buy, $4 million worth of fire trucks out of your general fund, that money has to come from somewhere.
Correct.
So that's what will happen. It will drive up property tax. There's just no doubt about it. If you want to buy those things, or you can cut services. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand is the county provides service countywide. It doesn't stop at a city limit side. Fort Oglethorpe's fire protection is from the county. Ringgold's is from the county. Animal control, any services as far as court services, jails, all that, the county pays for those things. So there is a lot of expense that the county's responsible for that we're mandated by the Constitution that we have to provide. So, and those things cost money. But right now, you look at property tax rates are 4 or 9, somewhere in that millage rate, extremely low. And, we operate off of bare bones to be able to operate the county. But again, we are blessed to have SPLOST and we're blessed to have LOST. That's what contributes to that low millage rate.
So SPLOST came up March this year and it passed. It was roughly 60-40. Mm-hmm. I think that percentage from the prior election cycle, was it 4 or 5 years it had ran?
Yeah.
It was a little bit wider spread that time, so it was a little closer this time. I think you saw more folks out there messaging this time. You saw it like I did with signs saying vote no new tax, and then there was the opposites coming in. So there was a swell this time against SPLOST, and so it passed. It's a 6-year cycle this time.
Yes.
And I heard a number of 96 million estimated that it will bring in over 6 years. Now, I know that's an estimate.
That's an estimate, and probably a fairly close estimate, because we've got historical data showing how the progress of sales tax works. And the other benefit is what a sales tax based penny does. It allows us a way. I've always used the people get tired of hearing it, but I've said I've never had anybody knock on my door and say, listen, you got really great roads over here to Costco or to Walmart. We're from Tennessee. Here's $5. Put that on your property tax. I want to do my part.
Right.
They don't do that. We have no way of identifying and charging people that use, and everybody that drives into Catoosa County use our services. If they have a wreck, it's our sheriff, it's our ambulance, it's our fire trucks, it's our court system. So this allows, through a penny sales tax, of spreading that out to where the people that use our counties and cities pay a portion of what they use. And it's what we do every time we go to Hamilton Place or to any restaurant up at Hamilton Place. We're giving back to the Hamilton County and Chattanooga. We are paying them a portion of the services we're using when we go there. It's no different. And here we're in such a unique position in Catoosa County to be on the state line, on the interstate, people stopping in from Michigan and Florida and putting money into our local economy and our local tax base that we'll never see. And to me, it's the fairest way. A consumption tax is the fairest tax.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. I think you're right. I mean, like Costco is always the greatest example. How many folks come from every county around, not just Hamilton County? If you go through Costco's parking lot, you see Walker County, Dade County, Whitfield County. You see them from everywhere because we're blessed enough to have had it here in Catoosa County. And so you've got all those folks, like you said, even if they're just coming down the interstate from Hamilton County, jumping right off in there and then going back and not really using any of our roads, but they're still contributing a lot of money into our economy to help offset property tax. Yeah. You know, if there was a way tomorrow to just wipe clean all those pennies, if it said, okay, if you can produce, and if you're out of state or or out of county, you don't have to pay that penny, it would open a lot of eyes as to how many pennies that would be lost and what impact that would have into our budgets for our county and all that to maintain what we already have here today. And I think nobody really thinks about that, but I can guarantee you nobody would want to see that either, because it would have a huge impact.
It would have a catastrophic impact.
Sure.
It really would.
So SPLOST is 6 years, you guys. So when that gets voted in, it got voted in March. So now you guys have to sit down as county commissioners and figure out over the next 6 years how that money is going to be allocated. So walk us through a little bit of that, and what are those negotiations? And Denia kind of touched on the school system. So what does that look like from the county government with SPLOST? I mean, how did you guys figure out as a body of 5 commissioners or whatever, how to allocate that money out for projects over the 6 years?
Well, probably a year or so before the SPLOST vote, we start identifying projects. We talk to department heads. We talk to other elected officials. What do you see coming up? What do you feel like you're going to need? And the sheriff comes back to us and says, this is what I want. The judges come to us and say, we need this. Department heads say, this is what we see. And then we start identifying things like road paving. And you can pave roads with SPLOST. So we looked at, because there are several mechanisms of paving roads. The one mechanism, the one set of roads that kind of falls between the crack are the neighborhood roads.
Right.
So we identified several neighborhoods. We come up with a figure that we could do that. And so then we put all that money together, and it's a wish list. And we said, okay, voters, here's an outline of what we plan on using this money for. It doesn't go to a vote. Nobody votes that says, hey, we're just going to give you a blank check. You do what you want to with it.
Sure.
Everything, every dollar in that has an earmark someplace. And so it's not always spent exactly like that. I mean, it could be, it could be building maintenance, and in our mind, we're going to put the majority of it at the library, but something comes up. And another thing people don't realize, it takes 6 years to collect this. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, we voted for SPLOST, a few months ago, and they haven't paid my road yet. Well, it takes 6 years to collect all the SPLOST money. The only other option is go out and bond it and go into debt as a county, and this county is not in debt. We have a balanced budget. We have no debt, no bonds that we are having to repay, and we want to keep it that way. We pay as we go. So what we have to do is collect all 6 years, or a majority of those 6 years, and to get enough money to start building or paving. Now, one thing we do is we understand that 6 years from now, whatever we do today is going to cost probably half again as much.
Yeah.
So we've got money in a contingency fund we can pull out, and we're going to start paving those neighborhoods. You can't pave, they don't run asphalt plants in the wintertime, so we're kind of against that cutoff. But you'll see in the spring there'll be a lot more paving going on out there. But that's the restrictions you get on a SPLOST. And on a LOST, you have to wait till the money is collected. And then once it's collected, you kind of build up your pot and say, okay, now we've got enough to spend it on this project that we promised the citizens we'd do it on. And that's why, as a citizen, you may say, well, I voted on that 6 months ago, but I haven't seen anything happen. Well, because we've just started collecting that money. So once that money's collected and build up in sufficient amount, that we can spend it on a project.
Well, sure. It's not, if I start a job tomorrow and my first day, they don't give me my check for 2 weeks. What do I have to do? I have to work for 2 weeks, and I've got to put in the time. Then I get paid. And same thing, we've got to put those pennies in. And then when we collect enough, then we can do X project. So the prior SPLOST, I think somewhere along there was money left over.
There'll always be some money left over that carries over, because even though it's a project like on the 19 SPLOST, there may be things that have not been completed. The sheriff has money in the 19 SPLOST that because of COVID, what you planned in 19 and what you said, yeah, this is okay, citizens, here's what we're going to do. We went from our road mile paving costs have doubled. So whatever we said in 19 we could do, we found out in 20, guess what? It's now twice as much. So if we say we're going to pave 100 miles of roads, we can't pave but 50 miles of roads with that same money that was allocated to that. So that is another issue that crops up. But the main thing is if you can get on it fast, and that's one of the things we looked at when we came in. I don't like to see SPLOST money sitting in buckets from years and, 2 and 3 cycles ago.
Right.
Why do we collect it if we're not going to use it? We told citizens we need it. We took it, and let's spend it. If you collect taxes, you need to spend taxes for the good of the citizens. And so I think we've gotten a lot better at that. And again, the ones that's not there's all you have to do is look at a reasonable explanation is costs have gone up since COVID. And so whether you could get parts, whether you could get cars, whether, everything petroleum based, the prices of that, you have to live within, we've seen over the past 4 years when our home budgets, you go buy a pound of hamburger meat for $6. Used to you could get T-bone steak for $6. So you have to work within that budget and do what you can. But the main thing is we do what we tell the citizens we're going to do.
Yeah, I think the sheriff was talking recently. He's trying to do an expansion, correct me if I'm wrong, for a work release, which I think is a great idea to kind of get these folks back out in the community and not institutionalized or other things, because jails are at capacity and all that. But SPLOST dollars, we're going to go for that expansion, correct? So, he found a way to use that money to make the community better and try to solve a problem with inside the jails of, hey, listen, if we want to get where we're not at, capacity all the time, what can we do to try to work through this? And a work release program was a great way because, it's been proven in other areas. So that was SPLOST dollars. And so that's great. And
that's been a classic example of, okay, I need this much to do it. And then prices changed, and then he had to go into another SPLOST, and it went from $3 or $5 million to $8 or $10 million. And so, but yeah, that's a perfect, now that's an example of what the sheriff's doing, of we can continue spending money, taxpayer money, to, it costs about, if you send somebody to 90 days in jail, it's probably going to cost the county, I don't know, $7,000-8,000 to keep them there that long.
Wow.
And that's if they have no major health issues. What people don't understand, you got to feed them, clothe them, house them, and take care of their health. And so what the sheriff's wanting to do is make people more self-sufficient, which is what we've always, it's what everybody's done when they raise a kid. You want them to be self-sufficient. And he's going to build a place that makes adults and kids self-sufficient. They go to work, they pay their way, they pay their fines, they pay their families, they don't lose their homes because they've been locked up. When you get locked up for 90 days, you lose your home. I mean, nobody's going to.
Sure, your job, your car, your
everything's
house.
gone. You start from zero.
Exactly. And so this is a way, and then they're like, well, how can I pay my fines because I don't have a job? And it just snowballs.
Yep.
That's a great way of saying it. So, yeah, he came up with a creative solution, but he needed a facility to do that
And
with.
you do that through SPLOST.
Yes.
Because that allows him. And again, if we weren't getting this from SPLOST, we'd be getting $50 or $60 million to expand the jail to warehouse more people from SPLOST. So this is where you can take some money, and it would have been so much better had we been able to spend it before COVID. We could have already had it built and had it built cheaper, but, we didn't pick it. COVID happened, and that's just a fact of life. Everything is more expensive now. So now he got hit with it. He's got to wait till he gets the money to do this. So everything that's done with tax dollars is nothing's done for the enjoyment of the government. Everything's done for the well-being of the citizens of Catoosa County.
So without that penny, let's just say in March that got turned down by the voters and we'd have gone and fallen back to 6 cents on our sales tax. What would that have looked like, you think, years down the road? Having to still do the basics. And obviously there'll be things like, well, we can't do that. But I mean, we have to replace patrol cars every year. We have to replace fire trucks when they get where they need to be replaced because the maintenance is more than it's worth to keep it on the road. I mean, to me, it's like a no-brainer. It's like, well, we would have had to have gotten the revenue to keep those basic needs up somewhere. And the only place to get them would be from.
You do it one of two ways. You cut low-level services in order to, and at that, you're treading water, because at a point you're going to have to keep cutting services higher up the line until finally you're like, well, the only thing we've got left now is a volunteer fire department. Let's go back to that model. So you've got to cut low-level services and continue moving up that chain, or you have to raise property taxes. And I've already said, I'm not a fan of property taxes. I'm not a fan of raising property taxes. I voted one time the 6 years I've been on to raise property taxes. And that was during an emergency situation right after COVID when we had the sheriff saying, look, my people are going to walk. The fire department said, my people, they got places they can go. We've got to match, and we've got to provide it, good salaries, good working environments, good benefits, and we had to pay for that. And we were happy to do it. I mean, those people were worth keeping.
Now, so people watching right now, you're saying my property taxes went up this year. They went up a bunch. But from the county side, you did a full rollback on the county portion of everybody's tax bill.
That's right.
So if you look at a tax bill, everybody talks about it in simplest terms, saying 2/3 are school system and 1/3 is the city and county. Both cities and the county did a full rollback, which is basically saying that we didn't increase your property tax on that portion of the bill.
Right.
Yeah. So I could feel people watching going, well, hey, we got a hit this year. Well, no, we all did. I get it. You get it. I mean, everybody felt that, but it wasn't from the county this year or the cities. That increase was over on the school side. And I'm not trying to throw the schools under the bus, but I mean, it just saying where it came from. From you as a commissioner here, people watching, you did not increase property taxes this year on anybody.
No, like I said, we took the full rollback to flatten your taxes out. And what happened was the state of Georgia came in and said, okay, Catoosa County, you have to raise your values, your property values. We said we don't want to. We're fine. And they said, look, we're going to fine you 6 figures, and we're going to come in and do it for you if you don't do it. So the county, the Board of Assessors, who's a separate board, they reluctantly increased about 18% last year, and then this year about another 30%. Well, we were able to take full rollback to absorb that, where the citizens didn't have to absorb it. Talking about the school systems in a unique situation. They can't go over 20 meals or they get penalized, but they can't fall below 14 meals or they get penalized. If they'd have taken a full rollback and went below 14 meals, they would have lost all their equalization funding.
Millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars,
Which
yes.
now that millions of dollars, where's that got to be made up? That's got to be made up by the property tax.
Correct.
So they were in, that's not throwing them under the bus. That's just being realistic. And those are things that were mandated by the state of Georgia that was not, in my opinion, in the best interest of Catoosa County.
Yeah, there was a lot of external factors. Best way to put it. And the state, the word state gets used a lot when talking about what happened with the school board, right? Like the state mandated unfunded mandates. You've got to put this program in. But we're not going to give you funding for that. And the health insurance. And so the school board's laid that out. They've laid that out. It doesn't make it any better for the average citizen. They're like, listen, you can tell me all day long how it happened, but at the end of the day, I'm writing a bigger check this year, and that hurts. And I'm on a fixed income and all those things. So the school board, but then talking about the assessments, yes, well, they were looking obviously I deal with real estate, so they just came in and said, look, these houses are selling. This is what they're selling for in your county. If they're selling for this and the appraisals are coming back and matching what they're being sold for, then those are the values. Those are the real values. And what you're assessing them at is far below that.
That's right.
So we feel like you're trying to hold your assessments back, and we can't let you do that. There's things that come along with that. So you've got to raise it up to what things are actually being sold for in the county and appraised by licensed appraisers. And so that's kind of where that came down. But yeah, we had 2 years where it was just crazy.
Yeah.
They almost 50% in 2 years. And then commercial, that's just crazy. I mean, doubled. I mean, I've seen 4 million is 8 million now. And you're like, how can a hotel go from 4 million last year to being worth 8 million this year? But it happened. So there we go. We got 7 cents now. That's where we get our 7 cents. And that's what those 7 cents, we send it to the state. The state does their thing with what they do with that. We've got state funded roads here. So the state comes in and paves roads in Catoosa County as well. And that's part of your 4 cents that you pay in. And then we've got the other 3, 2 of them, you can basically say help property taxes. Well, actually, you can say that on all 3 because E-SPLOST, I mean, obviously the school needs to be able to maintain their facilities and do what Denia laid out. So now that brings us to this potential 4th penny. And this thing has, I don't even know where to begin on that one, Chuck, because, it's on the ballot and I've already voted, so it's House Resolution 1022, which is just to give the state the authority to amend the Constitution to enact House Bill 581. And that thing can just get downright complicated.
It is very complicated, and it's in pieces. You've got 2 pieces. One is HB 581, which basically, and again, you've got the state that came in and said, you've got to do this. You've got to do property values. You've got to get up within what we say property values are. And then literally in about a year, the state comes in and says, whoa, these poor people are paying too much property tax because of property values that we made you increase. Now we've got to come up with a fix on that, and we're going to fix it this way. Regardless of who says what, the bottom line is HB 581 allows your property tax only to increase at the rate of the CPI. So whatever that is, whether it be 1% or 3% a year, that's what your property tax or your values that you're being taxed on will increase. Now, where the other penny comes in, if the counties opt in on HB 581, the counties can also put on a referendum up to a penny sales tax in addition to what's already the 7 cents that's already there. So we can put on the referendum an extra penny sales tax. Now that penny sales tax, just like in Lost, has to go against your total property, your property tax. So Catoosa County is in a unique situation to where we could collect enough on homestead exemptions on that penny where it could basically wipe out the county portion. And that's where people get confused. This does not work on big farms that has hundreds of acres. It does not work on rental property, does not work on commercial or industrial property. Just the house and the property that's attached to your house that you live on, that's your homestead exemption. So it could conceivably wipe out all your property tax on your county side. The problem with that is as you said before, that's only about 25% of your property tax. 75% of your property tax will still be attached to the school, and they've been given no mechanism of how to collect property tax other than what is in the Georgia State Constitution that says everybody gets a free education through high school, and that is to be paid out of property tax. So they are stuck.
They are. So, yeah, that penny can only go to the city and county portions of your tax bill. So if you paid $1,000 a year in property tax, basically what we're saying is $250, $300, which is your city and county portion, could potentially go away over time. Here again, as we collect the penny, if it's passed, but it won't do anything for that other part of your tax bill, which is the school board portion of your tax bill. But it is relief. I mean, it does provide some relief on your taxes. I mean, it's like I would only be paying $700 instead of $1,000 in my example I gave. So that is something. And the penny is here again, not just shared, or it's not everybody just in Catoosa. It's the pennies we collect from everybody from out of state or out of county as well. But I've said all along, I think that penny, that'll be a tougher penny to get passed by the voters based on the climate we're in today, based off the year we've had with property tax increases and things of that nature.
Well, my fear is it'll be easy to pass because people misunderstand it and they think a penny sales tax will wipe out all my property tax. And then when it's all said and done, they come back and say, whoa, you lied to us. And my thing is I try to be crystal clear that we are only talking about 25% at the most of your property tax, which is the county portion. So that's why I want people to understand that that's how this works. And it's not going to work, if it passes, if it passes in November, it's going to be several years before it's even implemented. And then we got to go through the referendum of what they call the E-SPLOST, which is the other penny sales tax. So I have a bigger fear of the fact that people are going to forget about what it really could possibly do, which could be a good, it could be a good thing. There's some points I don't like about it. And real quick, one of the points I don't like about it is the fact that we've given special exemptions for property tax, county property tax, not school, but county property tax to folks on low income that meet an age requirement. And so you've got people out there making $1,200 or $1,500 a month in Social Security. That's all they've got. Well, they've been exempted from property tax. Well, guess what? Their property tax on their $85,000 house, I don't know if there is such a thing as $85,000. Let's say $185,000.
If they've owned it for many years, there is, Chuck, but not anymore.
Let's say their property tax would be the same as somebody that has an $850,000 tax, because you're both paying that penny sales tax. That's the hiccup I've got with this. But like I said in the beginning, I don't like property tax. I'm looking for any way that we can alleviate property tax. This is the best way that the state has come up to allow us to do this. So my thing is this: if the citizens vote for it, then that is a mandate to us to implement it. And so I think that's what we should do. We should look at it. If it passes, and we've got, like I said, there's two portions that passes. One is to allow the amendment of the Constitution, and the other is the referendum for the penny sales tax. So we just have to wait and see what the voters have decided.
We do, and that's why I wanted to do this episode, because I think education and getting folks to understand what we pay now, why we pay it, and then what the potential is for this next penny. Because like you said, people do have a short memory, right? And so, yes, and we can always come back and say, no, we did try to educate everybody on what this penny can do, because there's things it can't do. It cannot wipe out your whole property tax bill. There's just no way for that to happen. But it can provide relief. There's two relief mechanisms. One is we won't have that 20 and 30% on homestead exempt property if this passes, because it'll run with inflation, and that's not that high. And then the second part is if they pass the penny, then we can get some relief on a little bit of their bill. So yes, House Bill 581, a lot of folks have already voted. We have had record turnout in Catoosa County. I mean, statewide, it's been great, but in Catoosa, I mean, it's been amazing record early voting turnout, which is, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think Friday afternoon we were well over 10,000.
Yeah.
So
and after Saturday, it was almost 12. So I don't know what today's numbers will hold. We're
today.
recording, it was yesterday. We're on Tuesday here, folks. I know we'll run about a week behind. Today, right now, for when we're recording, we're 2 weeks to the election, to the general election, to kind of give folks a perspective on when we're talking right now. So I look forward to it too. Like you, I think if the folks vote that in and say, hey, we want House Bill 581, if I'm an elected official, I've got to be like, hey, that's the will of the people. Will of the people is what they put me here for. So I may disagree with certain things or I have concerns, but I've got to put that aside and I've got to do my job for the people, like you said. And so that's kind of where my mind's at as well. So thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been enjoyable.
This is great. I've always, this is probably about my 12th episode. So I enjoy doing this. I enjoy getting information to people. I think that's important. I think there's a lack of that in Catoosa County. We kind of get a little forgotten down here in Georgia. We're the bedroom community, but we just don't have a good way of getting information out as much as we need to. So.
Georgia ends at the Whitfield County line. In Atlanta, that's about as far as they think Georgia goes.
Yeah.
So it's always good to have any way to get information out to the citizens, to be able to engage the citizens. That's why we want them to come in and speak at our commissioner meetings. We want to hear from them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys did. You were part of that 5-0 vote to put comments back to the front. So, I mean, you walk the walk and talk the talk as far as that goes, as far as citizens' comments. So, thank you, everybody. Until next time, thank you and have a great week.